As we reach the end of the year, it's time to look back at my top 10 games of the year, and I do want to start this list off by saying that this is going to be my opinion, and if you don't agree or you hate my list, that's totally fine. I just want to give my take and tell you a little about why I liked each of these games. I also want to mention that I have not played Final Fantasy Rebirth, Black Myth Wukong, Metaphor, or Shadow of the Erd Tree, and I'm also currently working my way through Dragon Age the Veilguard at the moment, so you won't be seeing any of those on this list. Any of the games that you do see on this list, I will have a review for them, except Astro Bot, so if you'd like to hear my full thoughts that further expand on them, you can find them here on my channel. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Number 10, Palworld. This was the first big surprise that we got this year, with the game reaching over 2 million concurrent players on Steam last January, even with the game launching day and date on Game Pass. It's a fun, silly little survival crafting game that takes elements from different games within the genre and then fuses them with what is essentially Pokemon. While Nintendo has since sued Pocket Pair, the developers of Palworld, not for the designs, but more so copyright infringement on the way that the animals are caught. That whole outcome is still to be determined, but the game sits at roughly 200,000 players on Steam at the moment, and there was a big update that just dropped, so in the meantime, it looks like Palworld might be sticking around. Number 9, Dragon's Dogma 2. This is my first experience with the franchise, and I honestly was not having a lot of fun those first 10 hours or so. And I think this is because I was trying to play it like a traditional RPG open world game that we've been accustomed to over the last couple years. Dragon's Dogma 2 is a slow, methodical, downright irritating game at sometimes, but the sense of scale and that journey that you can take within this game is only something that I found within Death Stranding beforehand. While yes, the game requires a pretty beefy system to run it on PC, and it did have its fair share of technical issues at launch, I had a ton of fun when it was all said and done. The different classes that you can try out and customize, along with the different configurations for your pawns, they do benefit a lot, and I think it is a fun game, just if you know what you're getting into when you go in. It's a game that if it ever gets DLC or an expansion, I think I'll jump back in and give it another go. Number 8, Star Wars Outlaws. Might be another hot topic here on the list, but I actually really enjoyed my time with Outlaws. While the game isn't perfect, I love that feeling of being within the world of Star Wars. The ability to take your ship, fly from one planet to another, exploring different worlds, meeting new crime bosses, and just getting into all sorts of shit. The story does fit into the mainline, I guess, timeline with it coming after episode 5. You play as Kay Vess. Like I said, you go to different planets like Kajimi, Tatooine, Canto Bight, and then a few others that you haven't seen before. The gameplay side of things has been overhauled as well since the launch of the game, with them getting rid of a lot of the instant fail stealth sections that really did bother a lot of people, and they also increased the versatility of her blaster and just a few other changes. There is one DLC that is actually already out titled Wildcard, with the final one to release sometime in spring, and if anything, Massive has shown they're committed to player feedback, so I'm curious to see how this game ends up when it's all said and done. Number 7, Alan Wake 2's DLCs, Night Springs, and The Lake House. I did this last year with Phantom Liberty, having it on my list, and I think it's pretty fitting to have the DLCs for my number 1 game last year, Alan Wake 2. These short little stories offer up a little more insight into the world with the funny and weird Night Springs DLC. It's got 3 different storylines. They're really short, only about an hour. Then you have the more serious tone of the Lake House expansion, which takes place around the start of the base game, and seeing how that story is intertwined with the base game's narrative is really nice. If you love the base game of Alan Wake 2, buy the expansion. They aren't going to take you much time to get through, maybe 3 to 4 hours combined, but I think content that they offer, it's worth the price tag, especially if you can get it on sale. Number 6, Senua Saga, Hellblade 2. Arguably one of the best looking games to come out in 2024. The second Hellblade is a game that Microsoft has been showing off for over 5 years now, and we finally got that game here. Albeit it was about a 5 to 7 hour experience, which some would say is a detriment. The gameplay has also been simplified, no longer having to deal with multiple enemies at once like the first game. All the combat is now one-on-one, with you going from enemy to enemy, which has been done in this single-take fashion in the vein of the more recent God of War games. Audio plays a big part in this game, and even won an award at the most recent Game Awards, and with Melina Jurgens also taking home Best Performance as well, which I thought that was well-deserved. The second Hellblade might feel like a step back in some areas, but in others it takes generational leaps forward that at times had me questioning if I was playing a game or watching a movie. Number 5, Astro Bot. This is just a fun game to play. While I might not be as high on the game as everyone else is, I still recognize that this is a fun game, and it's also a celebration of the past 30 years of PlayStation's history. It's a simple platformer that sees you rebuilding your broken down PS5 by collecting different parts of it, and along the way you're going to be finding different bots. Sometimes they're going to be nameless bots, but then there's a host of them that are actually going to be PlayStation IP characters. You've got Ratchet and Clank, Last of Us, God of War, Returnal, Horizon Zero Dawn, Uncharted, and many, many more. It did win Game of the Year at this year's Game Awards in 2024, and I think that is a well deserved award. If you're on the fence about giving it a shot, go ahead and check out Astro's Playroom. It's a free game on PS5 that you might have missed. It comes pre installed. It's essentially a smaller version of Astro Bot, with both of them being well worth a playthrough. Number 4, Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. Holy shit, what a game! Space Marine 2 was my first introduction to the world of Warhammer 40k, and while I might not have understood everything, it was a fucking blast to play. Whether it's cutting your way through hordes of Tyranids or heretics, it'll really get your blood pumping, especially when you're in the middle of the shit. You're chaining counters to executions. It's just a satisfying flow state feeling you can get it while you're playing the game. The story of the game was pretty dope. I really liked the different missions and areas that you got to go to. Lieutenant Titus is a badass, and I also love that the entirety of the campaign could be played co-op with two other friends. You've also got the operations mode, which is sort of the post game launch content that follows parallel with the main game story, allowing you to customize a Space Marine. You can do whatever you want, make them look like a crayon. Then you have the PvP mode, which is a simple TDM domination style game mode with some classes that you select. So, whatever mode you decide to play or you want to play, I think Space Marine 2 is one kick ass game, and it's a great introduction to the Warhammer universe. Number 3, Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl. Making a video game is already hard enough, but having to make it while under the threat of war is a whole different type of pressure, and the developers of GSC Game World should be proud of the game that was released. While yes, that launch was a little rough, I think that the day one patch and subsequent patches have really helped smooth out that game. And while they start to roll out the A-Life system, which is still in its early stages, it does seem to be working. This game nails that feeling of being totally alone in a barren wasteland, albeit without the weird mutated monsters and anomalies. It's a game that I spent 40 hours with on those 2 weeks at launch, and I still found myself wanting to boot it up and walk around the zone to explore. It's little bits Metro, little bits Fallout, and what it does is to combine a game that I found myself really enjoying. Stalker 2 does take a little bit of time to get used to and learn, but that's part of the charm when it comes to this game. Playing and figuring out what it does and learning from your time in the zone. Number 2, Destiny 2, The Final Shape. If you know me, this isn't going to be a surprise. Destiny 2 is one of my favorite games of all time. I've put over 3,000 hours into this game across various platforms since 2017. The Final Shape for many is going to be the end of their Destiny 2 journey, with this expansion being the culmination of 10 years of storytelling across 2 games, countless expansions, and it surprisingly manages to stick the landing. They ended up pulling off arguably one of the best narrative storylines in the game, and like I said, giving us a satisfying end to that 10-year journey. They also had the addition of a new subclass in Prismatic, allowing us to combine both the light and darkness subclasses. Then you have the introduction of the Pale Heart location, which is sort of us going through all of our memories as a guardian as we get deeper and deeper. While I know that the future of Bungie and Destiny 2 isn't looking too bright right now, I do think Destiny 2's best days are probably behind them, but rarely does a piece of narrative work hit the mark after 10 years of storytelling, and I think Bungie did a pretty good job. Just a couple honorable mentions here that I want to throw in. These are all games that probably would have been, if this list was expanded to like 15 games or whatever, these are games that would have probably made that list. You got Starfield Shattered Space DLC. I liked it, thought it was fun. Balatro, I put like 20 hours into that game. It's addicting. Black Ops 6, fun game all around. Campaign's good. Multiplayer, sometimes. Got the Dark Matter camo grind. I'm done. Zombies, also fun. You got Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. I like most of it. And then lastly, you have Still Wakes the Deep. It's like a 3 to 4 hour horror game. All these are great games, but I just didn't think they would make that top 10 list. Number 1, my game of the year, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Yeah, if you'd have told me a year ago that my favorite game of the year was going to be the Indiana Jones game, I would have said you're full of shit. But color me impressed. This is a fucking awesome game, man. I know some might call it silly bad or fun bad, but I don't think it's really either of those games. It's a really authentic Indiana Jones story that sees you exploring the Vatican, the pyramids, jungles, and the Himalayas, all while solving all these different puzzles that aren't too complicated, but they do want you to use your brain a little bit. Open world sections of the game are going to offer up some side quests that can further expand on the lore and the story that you're in. Then you have just the actual gameplay side of things where you can go, you can throw hands, you can wear a disguise, or you can pick up different objects within the world, interacting almost like it's a Dishonored like game. Troy Baker also kills it as Indiana Jones in this game, at times damn near sounding exactly like Harrison Ford. And I mean, not just sounding like him, but the cadence, the mannerisms, all of it was spot on. You can really tell that he and the team at Machine Games really did their work when they were making this game. From the way that the punches sound to the way it feels to crack the whip at your enemies. It all feels like a true indie experience that feels like a continuation of a character that you already know and love. While I hope this isn't the last that we see of indie If it is, I'm happy with what we got, and I'm happy with saying that this is my favorite game of the year. That about wraps it up for me here in 2024. I just want to say thank you for all the support this last year because honestly, it's been a pretty shit year for me personally. I love making these videos, I love talking about games, and it's something that I hope I can do here more in the future. I don't have much planned for the start of 2025, but in February, it's looking pretty stacked with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Assassin's Creed Shadows, and Avowed all dropping within 14 days of each other. So if you want to catch any of my upcoming reviews for those games, subscribe, stay up to date. You can also check out some of my older reviews that I have. I know I mentioned it at the top, but I have reviews for all the games here that I mentioned besides Astro Bot, so feel free to check out those and let me know what you think. If you did make it this far, I just want to say thank you for taking the time out of your day, and this has been my top 10 games of 2024. Thank you for watching.